Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to Word of Faith Response. It's so good to be with you. This is Mark Morris with Word of Faith Fellowship, and we have so enjoyed sharing with you about the wonderful things that Jesus has done in our lives at the Word of Faith Fellowship. We've enjoyed being on this radio program because we've been able to share with you about our church, who we really are. We've been able to address a lot of the false allegations that you may have heard over the years in the media. We've done these radio programs now for going on 8 months, and we've had over 100 people from our church share, and we've been sharing with you two things. One is we've been sharing with you about the truth of the Word of Faith Fellowship and really refuting these allegations that you might have heard in the media and telling you the truth about who we really are. And you can go and listen to these radio programs. If you go to our website, it's wordoffaithfellowship.org. And you can see all our past radio programs, and they're actually videoed, so you can watch us. And you'll see the first many videos address the lies that have been against our church. And I think you will find them very helpful. And then we also have many videos on testimonies from church members of what God has done in our lives, because it's so important to share and give God all the glory for what He's done in our lives. And what you've heard, if you've been listening over the past months, is how God's brought people from many different backgrounds, from all different walks of life, from all different struggles, and yet God has brought us through these struggles and brought us to a place where we could come to know Him. And so it's been so wonderful to share. I hope that you would go back and listen to some of these radio programs, and I believe you would be blessed. And so today I have a very close friend of mine. His name is Tim Schlabach, and actually Tim and I both came from Los Angeles, California. I came in 1990. Tim came about a year or two after that, somewhere in 1991 or two. And actually I grew up knowing Tim. Tim lived not far from me in the San Fernando Valley. Tim was very close friends with my family. I have memories of when I was little, him watching me and actually picking me up and trolling me around. Now I think we look like the same age, and I feel like I'm his age, but you know how it is when you're younger. So he babysat me. It's pretty amazing. Now I have this guy that babysat me on this radio program with me. But Tim and I were very close friends, and it's funny how as I got older, Tim and I became really best friends in Los Angeles. And so I moved here in 1990, and Tim came a little bit after that with his wife, and of course, he's been here ever since then with me, and we've just remained wonderful friends, and I really appreciate him. He's been just such a great friend to me, and so he is going to share with you today what God did in his life, and I know you're going to be blessed. It's amazing to hear these amazing stories. I love to hear what Jesus Christ has done in our lives. It truly is wonderful to know that God loves us, and He watches every part of our life, and He cares for us. So with that said, we're going to listen to Tim share his testimony. So, Tim, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Good morning, everybody. It's an honor to be here and get to share my story like so many others have done. So we'll just jump right into it here. I was raised in, I grew up in Los Angeles area. I was raised in a pretty strict environment. My family, my dad's side of the family came out of an Amish background, and so we were, as growing up, we weren't not Amish, but we were very strict, and we didn't play on Sunday. We were very calm and very orderly that way. So I grew up, and then as we got older, we went to a bigger church that had more youth activities. And one summer, the church was sponsoring a youth activity to make surfboards and learn how to go surfing. So I jumped onto that, and I was 14 at the time. And so really that introduced me into a whole environment that really was downhill from there. I got involved pretty heavily in the surfing environment, which it's beach lifestyle, it's a lot of partying, it's a lot of all of that kind of thing. So at the age of 14, I began to embrace that pretty heavily for the next 5 or 6 years of my life. Pretty involved. I also got a job so that I could get a car and buy gas and get myself to the beach and go surfing and do all that kind of thing. And when I got that job, it introduced me to a whole another group of people that were a little bit older than me. A lot of them used a lot of drugs, And so I was around that drug environment. I was around that drug environment because of my friends at school and my surfing. And so I found myself being kind of a point of connection, kind of in the whole drug dealing scene. I could, because of the people that I knew at the grocery store where I worked, and the high school friends that I had a lot of drugs available to me, and I could get to a lot of people, and basically just be a point of contact. So
you would have been. How old were you when you were working at this grocery store? You're around all these drug dealers, and you're now getting involved with this drug dealing scene.
I was 16 and 17 years old at this time, and so I'm still in high school, and trying to just make it through. My friend and I, we were very involved in surfing, and we had big plans. We were gonna, as soon as we graduated high school, we were gonna move to Hawaii, and live on the North Shore, and be part of the whole surfing thing over there. And one day he came to me and said that this was in April of our senior year. He said, I'm not going to graduate. As a matter of fact, I've also joined the Navy. And I was shocked and crushed, and I thought, what in the world? That was our whole plan. We were going to go to the North Shore and make it big, So
with those big, dangerous waves in the North Shore of Hawaii. I'm glad you didn't go. I've seen pictures of those. But.
Well, yeah, it was the glory of it, I guess. So, anyways, so I began to regroup and think about what I should do, and I always enjoyed Santa Barbara. One of my favorite places to surf was up in Santa Barbara, which is about 90 miles up the coast. So I decided that maybe I would go to college. So I ran down to the office to see how do you go to college. This is April of my senior year. I haven't taken an SAT. I have no idea what my GPA is, and I wasn't doing too good in school in those days. So
were you not interested in school?
I
know you mentioned you're in with all the drug dealers.
Yeah,
you're surfing.
I was in with the drug dealers. I was surfing. I was
school?
Partying. I was going to the North Shore. I had no plan. To go to any kind of college or have further my education or anything like that. So I decided that I would go to college in Santa Barbara and make a break. Now, let me back up just a little second. When I was a year or so previous to that, I was kind of the ringleader, so to speak, is what the name was given to me at my church, where I was still going to church. Now, there was a group of us that we went to school together, we went to church together. We were kind of made to go to church. We didn't really want to be there, but our parents went, and my parents said, as long as you're living in our house, you're going to church. And so I was kind of the ringleader of this group that sat on the outside. We were fringe, and we were very much rebellious and very on the outskirts. If we sat in on service, we were in the back. So anyway, so one night, the youth pastor came to my house and basically challenged me and said, "Listen, I noticed that you're the group leader, and we need you guys to be on board with us here." And he challenged me, and I began to think about that, and began to think about, that probably was, I didn't know it at the time, but that would be like the first time I would recognize that there might be a call of God in my life. And I didn't recognize it as that at the time, but it began to get me thinking about my lifestyle was wrong. I wasn't living right. I was really in charge of all these lives that I was leading down the wrong path, truthfully.
This was the church that your parents were making you go to.
Correct.
Was this a pretty big church in Los Angeles?
It was a big church in the San Fernando Valley area at the time. And like I said, we went to they chose to go to a bigger church because of the more youth opportunities that a bigger church would have available. Right. So anyway, so I began to think about these two things. So I didn't know how to get out of my lifestyle, though, Mark. I didn't know how to get out of, all the drugs, the partying. I didn't know how to break away from the popularity and the circle of friends that I had. I didn't know how to break out. So I thought, well, if I move to Santa Barbara, I can just wipe the slate and I can just start again, and I can just make a clean break, and it was an easy way for me that I thought I could get out. So I went home. I told my dad. I think I floored him because he was beside himself that I actually wanted to further my education and try and make something out of my life. So he did everything he could. Of course, I had no SAT. I had no preparation to go to college in a couple of months. So we found that Santa Barbara Community College, which is a local junior college there, would take me. And so I signed up, moved up there, and the clean break I wanted to make didn't really happen because, when you are a slave to sin, Mark, it rules your life. And Paul says in Romans 6 and 7 that basically the things you want to do, you don't do, and the things that you don't want to do, you end up doing because the sin rules your life and it controls you, and you have no way to break out. And that was my case. So I got to Santa Barbara. I ended up living in this house with a bunch of other young people. We had all this marijuana growing in our backyard, and that whole cycle was set to start again. And even though I knew it in my mind, it somehow didn't matter to me at that point in time. I mean, I wanted to make the break, but yet I didn't want to make the break that bad. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so these guys were, they were older than me, and they had their lives of drugs and stuff like that. And so one of my roommates, early on, I think it was like the first week I lived there, he had done a lot of drugs, and he had done a lot of LSD. And the thing about that particular drug is that it can have what they call a flashback. And this guy had done so much of it that he had a flashback one day and started about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he literally went crazy. And I didn't know really what was going on at the time. I was still pretty young. I'm 18, but I thought I'd seen some things, but this was really shocking to me. So he started to lose his mind. He started the terminology would be flip out. He was flipping out. We had to call the sheriff to try and get him under control. So they were in our backyard trying to get to his bedroom because he had barricaded himself in the room. So I had one of my roommates was in the backyard pulling up all these marijuana plants, throwing them over the back fence in the neighbor's yard to hide all of our contraband and stuff like that. So anyway, so it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I was terrified. I was so frightened to go back inside the house and go to bed. I had a class the next day. I didn't know what to do. I sat on the curb in front of my house, Mark, and for the first time in my life, I said, God, I don't even know how to pray. I've been in church my whole life, and I don't even know how to pray. Jesus, I need help. I don't know what to do. I was terrified. And I sat there, and I just said, Jesus, I don't even know how to pray. Help me. Jesus, help me. So from that point, I jumped in my car. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I went up the road a couple of miles to my favorite beach, which was why I loved living in this house, because my favorite beach was just up the road. Mm-hmm. I slept in my car at the beach. I came home the next morning, and the county health department was there, and they were taking this guy away in a straitjacket. And I just shook my head, and I said, I have got to make a change. So I moved out of that house. I'm jumping ahead. I went home. That was a Friday. I went home and was telling some friends about the situation that happened. And then within hours, I was in your living room with your mom and dad. And your mom and dad took me in as their son, and they were teaching me the ways of God. I had no idea how to walk with Jesus. Your mom taught me, and your dad taught me about that Jesus wanted a relationship with me, and that Jesus wanted to be my friend, that I could talk to him, I could pray, and he wanted to talk to me. And I got so excited about it. I'd never heard any of this stuff before. Growing up in church, I'd never heard any of this stuff. It was like new to me. And so I began a whole new life at that point in time. So I went back to Santa Barbara. I moved out of that situation, moved closer to school, and got involved in a Christian group on campus there, and actually got exposed to some other more charismatic meetings, and that was exciting to me. I was so excited to have a new life and to be walking with a God that wanted to have a relationship with me that I never knew about before. So that was very exciting. So my college days kind of came to an end. I was in a geology program. I was going to study geology, and in high school I didn't have very good math success, and so I was supposed to go to calculus. I was failing in algebra, so I had to drop out of school and kind of regroup. So that was actually probably God's plan. I just didn't know it at the time. So I moved back home to my parents' house and began to work and began to cry out to God for what to do. I got involved in your parents' church because now that I'm back there, I'm around your family again, and your mom and dad were encouraging me, and I was seeing them. I think we were probably there every week at a Bible study at your mom and dad's house. And so I began to go to this other church. It's a very large church in the Los Angeles area, and I got very involved in the college group. And one day, a group of us, there was 4 or 5 guys, we decided that we wanted to know Jesus better. So we started meeting on Tuesday nights. We met a Tuesday night, and we began to cry out. We literally laid on our faces and just prayed, Jesus, we want to know you. Jesus, we want to know you. We want to know more about you. So we began to pray. We began to cry out. We met every week, and we began to feel led to pray for each other because we all needed more breakthroughs. We were all a mess, and so we began to pray for each other. So we would go in the living room and we would stand around and we would begin to pray, and we would break the power of demonic powers in our lives and break generational curses and break the things that were holding us back. And we were just starting to pray, and we were getting pretty loud, and God was leading us. We were getting excited. We were getting breakthroughs. We were changing. We were in each other's lives. We were trying to take responsibility to help each other walk daily and learn how to be led by God. And God was really beginning to move. And we went from 5 guys in a living room. Within 9 months, we were 70 people on a Tuesday night Bible study that were getting prayer and getting breakthroughs. And God was really moving in that little group. And we were
word must have spread in your
through the college crowd. And it was a big group, and we probably had half of that group on Tuesday night. And we were so excited about it. We just couldn't believe what God was doing. We were praying for people. People were getting breakthroughs. People were getting deliverances. And it was new to us, and we didn't really know a lot of things. But we were moving. We were just being led. We were just going where we felt like God was taking us. So, excuse me. So that began to get really big, and then the leadership at the church decided that it was that we were really beyond our limits, and we didn't really know what we were getting into, and we didn't really know how to handle it. And so they broke it up into smaller groups and said we needed to kind of, wind down a little bit. So that was very disappointing to me because we felt like God was really moving, and we couldn't believe that they would actually think to shut us down like that. So anyway, so we that actually was really very disillusioning and disappointing to me. And so I began to kind of drift a little bit, and I started to I moved on from the college group to an older group, and then there I met a girl, and then I actually ended up getting engaged to her, and that didn't work out. We broke up, and I was very crushed. I was very disappointed by the whole thing, and nobody could give me any answers. I couldn't get what I felt like were satisfactory answers, and in my heart I kept crying out, Jesus, there has got to be a place. There has got to be somewhere that I see the book of Acts was working. There's got to be a place somewhere like that. And so I began to drift, and I gave my whole heart to my career. At that time, I had just finished photography school, and I began to give myself to that wholeheartedly. I went from church to church looking for a better church, and I couldn't find one. I bounced around a lot. And so I began to actually even not go to church, just because there was nothing that I considered satisfactory. So I did give my whole heart. I got involved in the advertising industry in Los Angeles, and I worked for magazines. I worked for photographers that had big clients. I worked for Kawasaki, Yamaha, Honda. I traveled internationally for Honda. We shot all kinds of pictures. I got to ride every fast motorcycle that was about to hit the street. I got to ride every jet ski that was coming out. I got to ride in fast cars that we would shoot for these magazines that we would work for. I drove Porsches. I drove all these other fancy cars for these magazines, and it was really kind of a wild time in my life. But yet, I still knew that that something was missing, mm-hmm. And so anyway, so one day I got to because I think you had come here by then, and I had heard about Word of Faith, and I got invited to come, so I decided to come and see for myself what it was, And I'm just going to back up here to make sure I didn't miss any details. But so I came to the Word of Faith for the first time in, you said 91 maybe. I came to my first seminar, and
you had married by then.
by then,
Right.
yeah,
You
no,
married
by now,
Debbie, your
I got
wife.
married to Debbie. Yeah, Debbie, she's a physical therapist
And
in
you were
County.
in your photography. You
And I
had
was
a photography business. You're married.
Wide open.
So
in
you
photography,
came
yeah.
here to visit right after I came here. I think it was 1991.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I came here to visit right after that. So, so I came to just to check it out, just to see, because I'm still looking. I'm still holding on in the back of my heart somewhere for this church that I feel like is out there somewhere that's like the Book of Acts. And so, anyway, so I came and I walked in the door. This is a Monday afternoon now, so I came for Sunday night service and then a Monday morning service, and then Monday afternoon there was a prayer service. Back then we had meetings in the afternoon at the weekly seminars that we were having. So so I came in the afternoon. I was running a few minutes late, and they had already started by the time I got there. They had already started to pray. I walked in the door, and my mouth fell open, and I said, I know that prayer. We used to pray like that at our Bible study. We prayed like that. That's how we prayed. And I couldn't wait to get home. And I called my wife. I said, Debbie, I found it. We're home. I found home. We gave up everything to come here, Mark. For us, it was the pearl of great price. You know, we gave up everything to come here because it was such my heart's longing. You know, we get a lot of criticism here, but you know, people don't care about my background, good or past here. I'm surrounded by a family of people that just want to see me make it. They just want to see me make it. They don't care what I did, good or bad. They just want to see me make it to heaven. And that's all we're about. And we've given up everything to live this lifestyle that we are here. You know, people attack us for how we live. People say we're this, we're that. But the truth of the matter is, Mark, in that little Bible study in Los Angeles, 5 guys started to find the presence of God, and He led us the same way. And so I can't say that it's just this church. It's to wherever God leads people in the world, you know, down that path. So anyway, so my wife and I, we came several times, and we decided that this was it. When we moved here. And then so since that time, we've raised our children. Our children have grown up here, and I have the privilege of you know, when I was younger, living in Los Angeles, I thought I will never be able to afford a house. I will never be able to buy a house. Well, we're living in our second house. God has blessed me with a big, huge house. My daughter lives with us. Her husband, my grandson, lives with us. I am so blessed to see his happy little face running around every day, and it's such a blessing to see that. And God has blessed us so much. I mean, Sam and Jane are like my mom and dad. I call them Mom, and I call Sam, actually I call him Papa. But you know, you can't walk down the hall without Sam grabbing me and asking me how I'm doing and finding out how's it going, how's business, how's everything. And Mark, I mean, I'd do it again, because I have a family here that cares for me. And like I said, they don't care about my past, good or bad. They just want to see me make it, you know. All of the ministers are that way. Brooke is like my sister. She told me one time, it takes more than DNA to be a sister.
That's right.
And so, you know, I'm so blessed to be here. I'm so happy to be here. I can't imagine leaving, because I've spent my whole life. I mean, God gave me opportunities. I had everything kind of that you would want in the world. I had all the drugs I wanted. I had all the friends I wanted. I had fast cars. I had motorcycles. I had all of these things. You know, I was around models and TV personalities, and I had all of these things that people think is something to have, and it was nothing. I would give it up in a minute for the peace in my heart, and I know that this is where God has called me to walk, and I can walk here and grow here and fulfill the call of God in my life. And I am so excited to be here. I'm so happy to be here. And you couldn't convince me otherwise.
And that's so powerful, Tim. And I'm so glad that your testimony reminds me a lot of mine. And I was just like you. It's interesting. We were actually at the same church over there. It was the huge church, Los Angeles. And Of course, you would have been in college. I would have been probably maybe in those little Sunday school classes, But somehow, both you and I had this same burning desire. And I shared my testimony about a month ago on this radio program, and it's a lot like yours in the sense of both you and I really had a desire to find this church that we read about in the book of Acts. And you mentioned that, and I was just like you. I read about this church in Acts, and it was this group of people that they had this fire that was in their hearts, and they really just didn't care about anything out there in the world, and all they wanted was to just serve God with their whole heart. And you see how that happened in the early church, and God brought these people, and they went through this incredible persecution back then, and it didn't faze them at all. Because they loved God so much, they were just rejoicing because their whole life was serving God. And I was just like you. I looked and looked, and when I came here, my response was just like yours. My mouth dropped, and I heard God tell me, this is the place you've been looking for. So it's so wonderful how God did that. God spoke to you in your heart, and God spoke to me in my heart, and I'm just so grateful that God put that in your heart. And your testimony is so true that when you really want God with all your heart, God will make the way. We don't know how.
We don't know how.
You and I couldn't find Spindale on a map being in Los Angeles.
Right.
But this was where God wanted us. This was the place that God wanted to plant us, in this church. He saw a desire in your heart and my heart. And so I'm just so grateful for what God's done in your heart. And I'm grateful that God brought you here because you're such a good friend to me. So thank you. And I hope that you have enjoyed hearing this testimony, because it's so wonderful to know that God has his hand on our life. Wherever we are, wherever we live, whatever the backgrounds are, he loves us. He has a wonderful plan for us. It actually says in the Bible that he has our days all planned. He has a book written about our life. Every single page is filled with wonderful things that God has for us. You can read about that in Psalms 139. And so I want to encourage you today that God has a great plan for you. If you will seek him with all your heart, like you heard Tim, then he will bring you into that plan. If you surrender and you say, God, I just want your plan for my life. I want a relationship with you, Jesus. I want to walk with you every day. I want to surrender and give you my whole life. He's there to do that. He's there to give you his wonderful presence in his life. So I hope you've enjoyed this morning. We are here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8:30 to 9. Again, you can go to our website at wordoffaithfellowship.org, and you can see all our radio programs. And I hope you have a great day.